Alrighty then, this is one of my next projects. This is going to be the more current, or the more, I don't know, this is going to be the next one. This is I believe it's called a DPS5015, and it's a power supply, or at least it's part of a power supply. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about this. This particular one I got from Banggood. It comes with an option. You can either put Bluetooth or USB, and then there's an app that you can download that will allow you to control it from a computer. I'm probably going to use the USB attachment. I don't have Bluetooth on my computer and don't really care to at this point. As you can see, I've already mounted it started mounting it in a project box. I'll probably put a picture up of what this looks like completely put together, but I got this project box from a ham radio festival for $5. They usually want ridiculous prices for it. I think they want like anywhere from $15 to $20 something for this project box. If I can find it, I have a link for where you can get it for about, I think, $8 or $9. I don't remember if it's Banggood or Amazon or where, but don't get the ones off eBay. They're really expensive. A little bit of information. In order to use this, you have to supply your own DC power supply. All this is a buck converter. It's rated at 50 volts and 15 amps. So you need to supply, if you want to get the full 50 volts out of it, you need to supply, I believe it's 60 volts at 15 amps. And I don't have anything like that here, but what I've got is several transformers that I have removed from other pieces of equipment. I have one that I think is 35, puts out 35 volts AC, which when you do the calculations for adding a capacitor and whatever and converting to DC, comes out to just over 48 volts. So that will mean that I will get out something like 44, 45 volts out of this. The transformer also can probably put out easily 25, 30 amps, so 15 amps won't be a problem. I'm going to have to build it. I probably will go over that, do the build somewhat in a video, although anyone can build a linear power supply. Some issues I've come up with in trying to build it is I would like to put a fan on the back. I have an old CPU fan that I'm going to put a hole in this and then mount it on the back to draw air through these this grate over and then out the back. The problem is it's 12 volts and this is going to be getting 45 volts or something like that. That's too much volts. This thing draws, even though it says 300 milliamps, it actually draws at 12 volts about 200 milliamps. I measured it. But with a dropping resistor, I'm going to need some ridiculous amount, like 10 watts of a resistor that's 10 or 15, 20 watts to drop that much voltage down, and then that's more heat to dissipate. I thought about doing it with a regular voltage regulator. The problem with that is once again I have to dissipate a bunch of heat. So I have ordered 4 smaller buck converters that can handle 50 or 60 volts and take that down to, I think, down to 5 volts. So I'm going to mount a small buck converter here for the fan. I'm going to mount the USB connector somewhere, and I'm going to use these style of connectors. I'm going to have a little pigtail come out the back, and I'm going to have that. These are rated at 30 amps, and this thing draws 15, so we shouldn't have a problem with that. I just have to have wiring that can handle 15 amps, or at least 20 amps. Then I of course have to come up with a case for the power supply. It's the transformer is kind of big. Yes, I know I could order one, a switching power supply, but it's more fun to build it. Plus I have a pile of really large transformers. I'm going to look and see if I can find one that will actually go up to 60 volts when converted to DC, but I don't know. I've also, this thing came with hard plastic feet. I'm going to use some rubber feet that I pulled off of an old radio instead of those, so it's a little less slippery. I've already started on the faceplate. I have a couple of these that I got off of an old HP oscilloscope, and of course your gratuitous AC adapter, or a power connector or cigarette lighter adapter from a car. I've got a bunch of these that I got real cheap, and that way I can test and power car accessories. And I think that's about it. I'm not going to film me building every part of it. I'll just probably bring it up in little stages, and as I go along, probably release a short video once a week on this. Yeah, plus the buck converters, I can build it without having the buck converters here. They're going to take probably 3 or 4 weeks to get here, because they're coming from China. I could have got them off of Amazon, but for the price of, I think, 4 of them, you could only get one from Amazon, and they were almost exactly the same thing. So that's it for this bit of the video. Okay, I've been working the last 2.5 hours on this. I have mounted or cut out a hole for the keypad control display. I have mounted the fan, and temporarily I've got some wire mesh over this. I don't have a proper cover. The fan is just in there, it's not going to be wired right now. And I have used these type of connectors for power in, because I already have my bench power supply already has that type of connector, so I can test it without having to go and build power supply. My bench power supply puts out, I think, a max of like 28 volts or something like that. So I've got number 10 wire, which is supposedly capable of handling, depending on whose wire information you look up, anywhere from 30 to 55 amps. I think it's actually more like 33. This thing's supposed to not draw any more than 15, so that's double the capacity. 30 amps is double the capacity this thing will put out. So let's fire this thing up. I've already got my power supply on, and I've got it set to max. So we're gonna plug it in, and it's come on, and it says that we have 27.1 volts. And so I'm going to put this on, and we're going to be out putting 5 volts. So I'm just going to check that against the multimeter, see what that says. Multimeter says 5.02, display says 5, so we're good with that. And we have 5 volts on this, although I would probably never be hooking anything up to that that wasn't 13.8 volts, I think it is. So the next thing is I need my buck converter for the fan, and I need to build the power supply for this. So we'll disconnect it, and it shuts off. So I get out of the